Good morning, children. In our previous video, we have done with part 1 of the lesson, I want something in a cage. Before we move on to part 2, let us revise part 1. In part 1, Mr. Purcell owned a pet shop. He sold cats, dogs and monkeys. He also sold fish food and bird seed. The birds and other small creatures were closed up in cages. They made lot of noise, but Mr. Purcell was used to that particular noise. Each morning, Purcell sat on a high stool behind the counter to read the morning newspaper. He read the whole paper. As he read, he smiled or frowned. It was a rough day. Strong wind was blowing. A bell at the door rang whenever a customer entered the shop. But that morning it did not ring. A stranger entered the shop. So till here we have done, isn't it, children? Now let us move on to the part 2 of the lesson, I Want Something in a Cage, written by L.E. Gray. Now here you can see the picture. The stranger enters the shop, that is the pet shop, and Mr. Purcell is in the shop. So let us know more about the stranger and his description. The man's shiny shoes squeaked forward. His suit was cheap, ill-fitting, but obviously new. So here the stranger's shoes are shiny, they are bright. And as he moved forward, they made some sort of sound. Squeak means some sound. His suit was cheap. So whatever the suit which he is wearing, it is of cheap quality. And ill-fitting, it did not fit properly. But that suit was obviously new. He had a shuttling glance and close cropped hair. So here shuttling glance refers to constantly looking to and fro. So he was looking here and there. And a close cropped hair means, here you can see the picture, children. So closed cropped hair means the hair which is cut very closely, which is very short. Ignoring Purcell for the moment, he rolled his gaze around the shadowy shop. So he rolled his gaze means he had rolled his eyes and he looked around in that shop. A nasty morning, volunteered the shopkeeper. He clasped both hands across his melon-like stomach and smiled importantly. So here you can see the picture, that is clasped both hands across his melon-like stomach means putting both hands on the stomach, which is melon-like. And here and he smiled importantly. So it is the stranger who has entered the pet shop, and this Mr. Purcell, he feels it very important, important about the customer, and he smiled to him. I see by the paper we are in for a cold spell. So we are in for means we are likely to have. I see by the paper means here this Mr. Purcell, he is very good in reading the newspaper. So according to the news, he says that they are very it is very cold outside. Spell means duration. So that particular time it is very cold outside. That he says to the stranger. Now what was it you wanted? So he asks the stranger, what does he want? The man stared closely at Mr. Purcell as though just not aware of his presence. So he had already entered, and now he feels, now he stared means he looked. He looked closely at Mr. Purcell. All this time he was there, but he did not, he felt, he just neglected, or he felt as if he was not aware of the presence of Mr. Purcell. He said, I want something in a cage. So the stranger says to Mr. Purcell that he wants something in a cage. Something in a cage? Mr. Purcell was a bit confused. You mean some sort of pet? So Mr. Purcell was confused. So what does he mean by it? So he says that, do you want pet? I mean what I said, snapped the man. So he interrupted and he said, I mean whatever I said, I mean that only. Something in a cage, something that is small. So he says that he wanted something which is very small. I see, hastened the storekeeper, not at all certain that he did. His eyes narrowed gravely and he pursued his lips. Now let me think. A white rat perhaps? I have some very nice rats. So this is said by the storekeeper. Storekeeper is Mr. Purcell. So I see hasten. He was in a hurry to show the things which are there in the cage. Not at all certain that he did. His eyes narrowed gravely. So he looked and he pursued his lips. Pursued his lips means he had taken a breathe, and then it shows the lips. So here you can see the picture of this girl, lady. Now let me think. A white rat. So he says that whether he wanted a white rat. Perhaps I have some very nice white rats. So he says that he has some white rats also. No, said the man, not rats. Something with wings, something that flies. So the stranger said that I don't want rats. I want something with wings and something that flies. So a bird, exclaimed Mr. Purcell. So Mr. Purcell said that probably, yes, do you want a bird? Okay, a bird's. All right. The customer pointed suddenly to a suspended cage which contained two snowy birds, doves. How much for those? So now the customer here refers to the stranger. The stranger, he said okay that he wanted birds, and also he pointed towards a suspended cage. Suspended cage means the cage which was hanging, and in that what were there? Two snowy birds were there, and snowy birds, the white doves which were there. How much for those? So he asked the price. Okay, the customer or the stranger, he asked the price for those birds. 550 came the prompt answer. So promptly this Mr. Purcell says that it is 550 and a very reasonable price. They are a fine pair. So he says that it is very reasonable price, and that pair is very fine. 550, the man was obviously crestfallen. So who is this man? The stranger. When he heard 550, he was crestfallen. Crestfallen means disappointed. He hesitantly produced a $5 bill. So he refuses that he cannot pay 550, and he shows just $5. I would like to have these birds, but this is all I have got, just $5. So this stranger says that he has only $5. He has just $5 with him. Mentally, Mr. Purcell made a quick calculation, which told him that at a 50-cent reduction, he could still reap a tidy profit. He smiled magnanimously. So magnanimously means generously. So Mr. Purcell, so when the stranger said that that he has just $5, immediately Mr. Purcell, he made a quick calculation in his mind, and he thought that yes, I can give for $5. Even if I give for $5, I can have a profit. Okay, my dear man, if you want them that badly, you can certainly have them for $5. So here Mr. Purcell says that if you are interested to have these birds, then you can have them for $5. I will take them. He laid his $5 on the counter. So the stranger says that yes, he is very happy that this Mr. Purcell is giving it for $5. He laid that amount on the counter. Mr. Purcell tottered on tiptoe, unhooked the cage, and handed it to his customer. So tottered means he moved unsteadily from there, and then he had tiptoed. Tiptoe means as that cage was hanging, he had to remove that hook of the cage. So he had to tiptoe, and he had taken it and he had handed over it to the customer. The man cocked his head to one side. Cock means he moved his head. So who is this man? The stranger. So after taking that, the man, the stranger, he moved his head towards one side, listening to the constant chittering, the rushing scurry of the shop. So he just moved his head towards the sidewards, and he was listening to the noise, listening to the sound made by these birds. That noise, he blurted, doesn't it get you? So now he says that particular noise, doesn't it disturb you a lot? So doesn't it get you? Doesn't you feel that it is disturbing you? Noise. What noise? Mr. Purcell looked surprised. He could hear nothing unusual. So Mr. Purcell asked asked the stranger. He says, noise. What noise you are talking about it? And he looked very much surprised. So he daily stays in that particular pet shop, and it is very usual for him to hear it. So he did not feel anything which is unusual to hear the sound. The customer glared. The customer means here the stranger. He glared. Glared means he stared at the man. I mean all this caged stuff. So caged stuff refers to the pet animals which are there in the cage. Drives you crazy, doesn't it? Okay. Now we'll move on to the next slide. Mr. Purcell drew back. Either the man was insane or drunk. He hastily, yes, yes, certainly I guess so. So Mr. Purcell, he drew back. He came backwards. Either the man was insane. So the man here refers to the stranger. Insane is very foolish, or he might have drunk. He said hastily, very quickly, fastly, he said, and it is sure, whatever the guess which I made, I'm sure about it, he says. Listen, the staring eyes came closer. How long would you think it took me to make the $5? So listen, who says this? The stranger says. He says listen. So he wants to say something to Mr. Purcell. The staring eyes came closer. Staring is looking. His eyes came very closer to Mr. Purcell, and he asks, and he puts a question to him. How long would you think it took me to make the $5? So can you guess how long I have taken time to earn this $5, which he paid to the Mr. Purcell. The merchant wanted to order him out of the shop. Merchant here refers to the Mr. Purcell. So he wanted to order him. Order means he wanted to send him out of the shop. Now, as he had paid the bill, so it is over. So he needn't hear anything from him. But oddly enough, he couldn't. But it is very odd. It is very wrong for Mr. Purcell to send him out of the shop. He heard himself dutifully. Dutifully refers to very sincere, asking, why? How long did it take you? Then he says, so he felt it very responsible for himself to entertain the stranger, and he asked him why and how long did it take for him to earn that $5. The other laughed. So the other is the stranger. He laughed. 10 years at hard labor, 10 years to earn $5, 50 cents a year. So here the stranger says that it took for me 10 years to earn this particular amount, and this amount I have earned because of my hard labor which I have done it, and yearly 50 cents he was able to earn. It was best. Purcell decided to humor him. My 10 years, that's certainly a long time now. So here Purcell, he decided to please the stranger, saying that 10 years you have taken it. So it's certainly a long time. So now he says, they give you $5, laughed the man, and a cheap suit, and tell you not to get caught again. So these lines are said by the stranger. The stranger says that they give you $5. So who are they? Who are they? The people. And he laughed the man. So the stranger laughed, and he says to Mr. Purcell that they give you $5 and a cheap suit. The suit which they give, it is cheap, and tell you not to get caught again. And they say that you should not get caught again. So what does this mean? So this man, the stranger, he came out of the prison and directly he came to the pet shop. Okay. So they give you $5. So when he was released from the prison, he was given $5. So why he was given $5? For the work which he had rendered in the prison, and a cheap suit. So along with that, they give a cheap suit also, and tell you, they also inform you not to get caught again. Okay. Mr. Purcell mopped his sweating brow. So here you can see the picture, mopping the sweating brow. So why he was mopping his sweating brow? Because when he heard that he was informed not to get caught again, so with that Mr. Purcell came to know that he was a prisoner, or he had done some sort of crime, and he had come directly from the prison. Now about the care and feeding of your doves, I would advise. So now he says that as you have taken the doves, and I wanted to tell you how you should take care and how you should feed these doves. So that I would like to advise. That Mr. Purcell wanted to inform the stranger. Bah! The man swung around and stalked abruptly from the store. So here the man swung around, he moved around and he walked from there. Suddenly he walked out of the store. From that store he came out. So the stranger, he came out of the store. Purcell sighed with sudden relief. So Purcell, he sighed with a relief that this man has gone, because he is a criminal. He has come directly from the prison. He waddled to the window and stared out. So through the window he was peeping and he was staring at the stranger. Just outside, his peculiar customer had halted. Peculiar customer is the strange customer. So this customer, or the strange man, he went outside and there he had halted. Halted means he had stopped for a while. He was holding the cage shoulder high. Shoulder high means above his shoulder. He was holding the cage which had two doves. Staring at his purchase. Staring at his purchase means purchase refers to the birds which he had purchased from the shop. So he was holding the cage shoulder high and he was looking at the doves. Then opening the cage, he reached inside. So he opened the cage, he reached inside and drew out one of the doves. So what he had done, he opened the cage and he kept his hand and he drew out one of the dove from that particular cage. He tossed it into the air. So he flung that particular bird into the air. Now we'll move on to the next one. So you can see the picture, what he is doing. He has opened the cage and one bird, one dove, he has taken it out and he had tossed it in the air. He drew out the second and tossed it after the first. So after tossing the bird into the air, he did with the second bird also, the other bird also. They rose like wind-blown balls of fluff and were lost in the smoky grey of the wintry city. So as it was winter, and those two birds, they were like balls of fluff. Balls of fluff means balls of soft weather, and they were lost in the grey sky, smoky grey sky. For an instant, the liberator's silent and lifted gaze watched after them. So here liberator refers to who gave freedom. So who has given the freedom? It is the stranger who had given freedom to those two birds. He had purchased those two birds from the shop for $5 and he had given them freedom. And he was looking, watching those two birds when they were in the sky. Then he dropped the cage. So he dropped the cage over there. He shoved both hands deep in his trouser pockets, hunched down his head and shuffled away. So he shoved first to, he pushed his hands, both hands into his trousers pocket, and then he had hung his head down and he walked away from that particular place. The merchant's brow was puckered with perplexity. Puckered refers to wrinkled and perplexity refers to confusion. The merchant's brow, so the brow, he was his brow was wrinkled, so he was his brow was wrinkled and he was looking what is happening, what the stranger has done with it. Okay, and he was in a confusion also. So here the merchant refers to Mr. Purcell. He was in total confusion that this merchant, that the stranger has come to the shop, and what he had done, his hard-earned labor, hard-earned money, for 10 years he had earned it, and that $5, with that he had purchased the birds and he had let them free. Okay, so he was in a confusion. So desperately had the man desired the doves that he had let him have them at a reduced price. So desperately, this man, the stranger, he was very badly in need of those doves. So he was desired to have those doves. So as this stranger was very much desired to have those doves, this Mr. Purcell, what he had done, he had reduced the price. Actually, it was 55. So $5 only he had paid and he had taken it. And immediately he had turned them loose. He had turned them loose means he had made them free. Now why, Mr. Purcell muttered. Did he do that? He felt vaguely insulted. So he was thinking why this man has done it, why the stranger has purchased it, and why he had turned them loose, why he had made them free. So he was very much insulted. Who was very much insulted? Mr. Purcell was very much insulted about the action which has been done by this stranger. So now from this story, what do we learn, children? So this particular story, it suggests that a stranger who was in prison for 10 years, and as he was there in the prison for 10 years, he knew the importance of freedom. So when he had come out after 10 years, he came to know the freedom. So this story tells us that we should not imprison any living animal or harm them in any way. Clear, children? Thank you.